Welcome to the channel, everybody. In today's video, we're focusing on a brand that is probably one of the most underrated. And the question is, should it be underrated? Well, I'll let you decide on that when we get to the end of this video. We are focusing on Srixon and we're looking at their drivers. I've got the ZX5 and 7 Mark IIs, and I'm going to be putting it up against the ZXi and the ZXi LS. Now, there's been some changes from this generation into the new generation, and I thought today we could have a little look at it, but we're gonna get some numbers. We're gonna see which one actually goes the furthest, and I'm gonna give you my thoughts on why you should consider looking at Srixon for this year. Now, we're gonna start off with the ZX5 Mark II, and I said in the intro that I just felt like I wanted more from these drivers, and that was always my sort of takeaway from the Srixon drivers. Is I think aesthetically they look so good, yet when it came to performance, I didn't feel like I was getting, let's say, the max out of these drivers. I was almost trying to hit it as hard as I could to get the ball speed up, to get the ball to go just that little bit further. And I'm just comparing that to other brands out on the market. But first impressions of the ZX5 is beauty, but also maybe just a little bit loud. And we'll look at the numbers as we go through this video, but when it comes to the ZX5, is one single weight port in the back of this driver, which means that it was kind of, I think, designed to be a little bit more draw bias. So I think there's a little bit more draw bias in it, but ultimately there's only one option, which is, well, you can change the weight, which might change the swing weight, but this one's coming out at D3, which is what I'm hoping all of them are going to be the same. Now, for this particular testing today, we've got the Ventus TR. It's a 60 gram S-Flex, which is pretty much what I'm using in my driver. And the older heads have got 9.5 degree options, and I've just tweaked them down to 9 degrees to then work nicely in for the two newer options, should we say, which are 9 degree heads. Now, interestingly, this is the driver that Shane Lowry was using. You'd think he'd probably maybe move into the smaller headed profile and lower spinning option of the ZX7. And actually, when I came to the testing of both of these drivers before, I was amazed at how close they actually were, which kind of makes sense for why someone like Shane would probably put it in the bag. Slightly bigger profile, going to give you that little bit maybe more confidence off the tee. Again, like, I feel like I've hit that really well, and you'll see from the numbers in a moment, but just not getting it out there like I want to. So now putting on the ZX7 head, again popping it down by 0.5 degrees, so half a degree less, bringing it from 9.5 down to that 9 degree to match in with the other two drivers. And what you've got with this particular model is two weight ports, one in the heel and one in the toe. And again, the idea of that is you can move a heavier weight into the heel to slow the heel down and get maybe a bit more of a draw bias, or you can push that weight a little bit more into the toe, which is going to slow the toe down and get you into more of a fade bias driver. Now, when you set this driver up, the first thing you're going to notice is that it does sit maybe just a fraction more open than what we're seeing out of the ZX5. And to be honest with you, as the low spinning option, you're probably looking at trying to get a club to maybe be a bit more fade bias than draw bias. A lot of tour players don't want to see that ball really turn over too much, and they want to be able to control that shape by just maybe moving it from left to right a fraction. But the profile of the head, it's definitely fractionally smaller in its look. However, to be honest with you, it actually looks very similar and actually really quite nice. And there you go, there's the first swing, going a little bit out to that right hand side. Let's just see if I can set this club up a little bit more toed in to square it up a bit. Okay, I've really worked the hands that time. And isn't it amazing, you know, just that feeling of that club just being a fraction open, and then you seeing that ball move out to the right hand side, it almost gives you that sense of, how do I square this up? How do I deal with this? And that's where the hands really start to kick in for me personally. So you're almost reacting to the previous shot, which is a natural human thing to want to do. But first impressions with this one, a little bit softer in its sound compared to the ZX5, as in a little bit duller. Still quite loud in comparison to other models on the market, but from a profile point of view, I really love the look of this one. So ZXi And this is the kind of what I call their standard head, should we call it. 9-degree setting, so I've put it into standard. We've got 2 weight ports in the back of this driver. So whereas in the ZX5, let's say, which I think was kind of like the equivalent to this particular model, well, kind of my thoughts anyway, got 2 weight ports in the back here, one with a 10-gram weight, one with a 4-gram weight. So we're gonna either move it into draw or fade bias, depending on where you put the weight. In this particular setup, we got it in draw bias. Now, what I would say with this particular driver, in, let's say, compared to the other 2 models, even though I would put it in with that ZX5, is it actually is performance-wise, from a setup point of view, is very similar to the ZX7 with those weight ports. I mean, visually, first impressions, it actually looks almost identical to the ZX5. Same shape, and the shape I think is, well, I think it's one of the best looking heads out on the market right now for sure. It's just simple kind of pear-shaped kind of look. But what I like about this head over, let's say, the other 2, the older models, is there's less white going on the top, so it's just more stealth kind of looking for me. Right, what does it actually sound like? A little bit duller. Look at the spin on that, revved right up. Okay, it can only get better. Don't spin so much. Loads of spin. Now though, we're gonna go with the ZXi LS low spin model. Now it's almost like Srixon have kind of got in line with the rest of the industry. And what I mean by that is offering a low spin model head. And I'm not saying that the ZX7 wasn't a low spin model head, and I'm sure on tour they can do lots with these heads by putting glue in certain spots and creating different weight ports and all those sorts of things. However, we're now going from kind of a ZX7, which was weights in the heel and the toe, to now weight back, weight forward, which again, it falls really in line with all the other LS models that are out on the market. Now, because we've got the option, and I've been getting some serious spin out of the other heads, I'm gonna just pop this weight forward. So we're gonna go now, because we got it there, 10-gram weight in the front, 4-gram weight in the back, set at 9 degrees, same shaft. Let's see what it can do. Oh, that's loud. That is loud, but the spin's come down, the distance has gone up, but I've turned it over. Now, one thing I'm gonna say when it comes to the LS version is that, again, a little bit different maybe, let's say, to other profile heads out on the market and compared to what we're seeing from the ZX7, but this one now looking almost identical to the ZXi, so a little bit bigger in its profile than what I was probably expecting, but all in all, it's going to give so many players so much confidence, and it sits beautifully, beautifully square, but God, that was loud. And loud again. That was a fraction spinny, bit of a mishit probably. Well, I think it's time that we take a closer look at these numbers that we're getting here. Should we go through ball speed to kick us off with all of these? I'm getting 148.9 mile an hour out of the ZX5 compared to 150.6 mile an hour out of the ZX7 compared to 150.9 mile an hour out of the ZXi, and then peaking us out at 151.6 mile an hour out of the ZXi LS. Going to expect that ball speed to want to pick up when you push the weight forward of any driver, really. But if we look at launches, 14.9 out of ZX5, 13.8 out of the ZX7, 14-degree launch out of the ZXi, and 13.7 degrees of launch out of the LS version. And to be honest with you, kind of what I expected to see, both the LS and the ZX7 just launching it smidgen lower than the other two, but all in all, pretty much within, what's that, 1.5 degrees of each other from a launch point of view, which is what you would expect to see when it comes to the fact that they're all 4 of them 9 degrees in loft. Right, here's the thing, when it comes to now the spin numbers. These spin numbers that I'm getting at a ZX5 and ZX7, very much in line with what I was seeing out of the previous testing that I've done. 2,700 spin at a ZX5, 2,800, 2,000, nearly 900 spin out of the ZX7. This is what I saw last time. I was getting more spin out of the ZX7 than I was the ZX5, which I was not really expecting either. However, then you move into the ZXi, 3,000 spin. I just couldn't take the spin off of this driver. And to be fair, there's one there that probably is a little bit lower in the strike. It's spun up at 3.5, 3.4 in the spin, which is probably affecting that a little bit. But let's say, for example, we bring that down to maybe 2.9 in the spin. So still a little high, but probably going to work quite nicely for lots of golfers out there that need a bit more spin. Then you go into the LS version, and this is where they start to strip the spin off. We're getting it down at 2,367 revs, which is actually, for a low spin head, not overly low spin. I'm not seeing anything dropping down into the sort of 1800 spin, everything in and around the sort of 2,000 to 2.4. And actually, for me personally, I think that's very, very playable on the golf course. All peaking out between 35 and 40 yards high, that low spin just peaking out a little bit lower, as we would expect. Lower spin, lower launch, it's going to peak out a fraction lower. But when it comes to the yardage carry on average, 249 out of the ZX5. I'm getting an average of 248 out of the ZX7. A slight drop off in the ZXi, but again, one miss hit in there. They've all got a little bit of a miss hit, to be fair, but one miss hit in there, so bringing it down a fraction. And then we're getting the most, which again I would expect for myself as a player, of swinging it about 106, 107 mile an hour in the studio today. I'm getting 256 yards carry out of that LS. So this is the sort of stuff that I'm seeing in previous testing to the testing that I'm getting right here today. The facts are that I just don't see the ball speed out of these heads in comparison to other heads on the market in the similar bracket. However, that doesn't mean that we're going to hit more fairways, and it doesn't mean we're going to score any less or any worse because of it. Well, there is my head-to-head of the old to the new in the Srixon drivers. And I've got to say, from a visuals point of view, I don't think there's a product out on the market that is going to really go up against the looks of the Srixon drivers. I think they look absolutely fantastic by the ball. And I think with that LS version being a slightly bigger in its profile, I think it's going to work so well for so many golfers. But remember, the numbers that I get in here today are pretty much off-the-shelf numbers. You can dial these drivers in really quite nicely to suit your game, which is why it's so important to get fitted for them. But I'd like to hear down in the comments, do the Srixon drivers interest you? For me personally, a little bit loud when it comes to the acoustics, but visually, there's nothing better out there. Don't forget, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you again on the next video.